see it or hear it? Check, check, check. Yeah, okay, there we go. Check, check, check. 1 1. So we'll be able to hear it here, and then there'll be a 10-second delay on that. But we're live right now. I think I'm just. Right, exactly. And this is just. Test, test, test.
I'm very excited for this. The other smiley face. What's his name? Grant. Smiley. I'm calling him smiley face. It's fine.
Check, check, check.
I'm not making fun of him. Because other smiley face. Is so moderate. It hurts. Yeah, it hurts. It does. It hurts very bad. And anytime I talk to him, we've been through it before. Just how moderate he is. I still go back to him. I'm like, you realize that you're not going to get anything done. Like there are some things that you have to be in the middle on, yeah, for change. And then there are some things that like, girl, if you're moderate, you have no, just say you don't have a position at that point. If you're that moderate about it, you don't have a position.
Pieces here, so I need to make sure we're clear. Freeze. Advisors and candidates are going to be up there.
Chrissy,
Campaign manager should have the poster for your candidate right here.
can you go to the URL on your computer?
You want her to use it?
I just wanted to check it.
Does it need to be discontinued?
No.
Oh, folks who are
Test,
not
test,
candidates,
test.
not advisors, who are my media people? Who are the media people? Okay, most are online. If someone wants to fill in as a media person for your team, so Claire is helping us out. If someone else wants to fill in, you're gonna have to get that okay by Mrs. D. All right? And then you will sit up here where Rachel's at.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. A B C D E F G H I J K L M Q R S T U V W X Y and Z. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. You sit over here, babe. No, you're over here. Oh. Because this is Haley and this is Tanu. There's 3 presidents. Oh. Yeah. You keep talking, just start counting. It's a beautiful day on this Thursday morning in C6, C7. Yes, that's fine. We are eagerly anticipating the begin of the long-awaited debates. Today we have 4 or 5. I don't know how many candidates we have. How many candidates? 5. 5 candidates will be taking stage today, battling it out over poorly researched politics. This is very exciting. How did your debate go? How did your debate go? How did your debate go?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I need you to relax because
Really?
we have got to get started. All right? We have got to
Not that
get
deep,
started.
buddy.
So, several things are going to happen. First off, again, so my friends who are at home, you were sent a link. Actually, you're sent a document in your school email. I also posted the same document in Schoology in the updates and in the materials section. That document is called the debate notes. Unless you are the candidate or advisor, you are taking notes throughout the debate. Your responsibility is to note the comments made by the candidates, all the candidates. Yes, that means yours too. This is part of your grade. My folks in the room, that paper should have been found on your table. Again, my folks at home, it was emailed to you this morning. It's in Schoology. It's posted to the updates in Schoology. Your responsibility will be to fill that out. The last 5-ish minutes, we'll see. I'm probably going to stop things and I'm going to let you know, hey, you need to finish that up and you need to email it to me. It is part of your grade. Online friends, it's time sensitive. So me getting it 3rd, 4th, 5th period means that you're losing points. If you're doing this throughout the debate, then you'll be in good shape. All right? Technical issues may or may not happen. We just roll with what's going on. Folks in the audience, your responsibility is to pay attention. Again, take notes. Media folks, your job is to be the media. Take pictures, post them. And again, I'm talking about the folks in the room. Take pictures, post them to your Twitter page, post them to your website. People should see all that stuff going on throughout the debate. That's your responsibility. Everyone else, your job is to pay attention and not be a distraction. In the event there comes a time where you have the opportunity to, in fact, ask questions, we will let you know that. Candidates, this is a big day. You're not going to be perfect. Nobody's asking you to be perfect. Just do your best. If you get tripped up, suck it up, move on. Don't ponder it. You ponder it, bad things happen. So make sure you're just locked into doing the best you can. Any question? Any? Good night, Ananya. Candidates, any question asked about the issues, you are expected to do your best to answer. Moderators, and I will get to them here in a second, we appreciate you being here. It's always awesome to see you all. You're welcome to ask questions at some point that are off the script, meaning not part of the issues, but they're not required to answer them. So, again, if you ask them about something and they don't want to talk about it, that's not, you just got to move on, because they've been told, and I'll give you physical copies of what the issues are if you didn't have a chance to bring those or look at them, but they, just like you all, have been doing a lot of work on those said issues, okay? Moderators are in charge of the debate, so really it's up to what's going on. And when we're talking about moderators, we have not one, not two, but all 3 of our presidents in the house today. Yes. We're so excited. She's going to continue to look at you. She keeps staring at her poster and remembering the glory that was that day that we went over the results. Well, we are super excited to have President Park, President Benamir, and President Tanu. I always mess it up.
Canary.
Canary. All right? Amazing people. They know what you're going through. They had to do it too. They know what you're going through because they put in the work. You don't end up on the plaque if y'all get a chance. Look, it says Haley. Look. So you get a chance. Your pieces are up there. You don't get on the plaque. Your posters don't go on the wall. You don't get the medallion. You don't get the glory. You don't get the power. You don't get your own seat with an eagle staring at you unless you've done what they've done. So super grateful to have you. We also have Mackenzie in the house. We have Rachel. We have Kayla. 3 amazing people, all of which are Studies Nation alum. 1 Studies Nation alum, boys alum. They're also moderating. Unique situation for Rachel and Kayla. They didn't have the opportunity to do this last year, so they're super excited to be participating however they can. So again, if they ask you questions about the issues, you're expected to do your best in responding to them. Any questions at this point? Moderators, any questions? You have a microphone, so the microphone, just if it comes to that point, just kind of pass it around.
With the
There's no
stand
rule.
or like just detach it and move it around?
Whatever you want to do.
Okay.
You're the president. So yeah, whatever works. Whatever works.
It is.
All right.
This is my nation.
So
This is
here's the next piece. We have 5 podiums. Mrs. D is about to explain to you how we decide who's going to end up where. Once she's gone through that and that process begins, then my friends who are the campaign managers, based on podium selection, you will walk the poster up. There are clips up here for you to put it up. This is so our moderators know who they're talking to. Okay? Obviously, not going to lie to you. If I have a chance, I want to be here, but we have people win on the edges all the time. I was talking to President Park the other day, showed her the picture, and I was like, hey, remember you were on the edge, and she had a funny story about how this all played out, why she ended up there. But it doesn't matter where you're at. It matters the presence you have within the debate. All right? Once the poster has been placed up, so campaign managers will come up, Steve's going to handle that. Advisors, your responsibility is to come to the podium that is marked with your candidate's name. Your responsibility, there are 3 microphones, 3 microphones, advisors, and candidates. When you're talking, everybody wave to Claire. Claire is, she is the tech guru today When you are talking, you are going to talk into the microphone because the people who are going to be streaming this otherwise will not be able to hear you. Yes, there's 3, there's 5. I don't do math well, but you're going to have to share. So pass it on when that occurs. All right? Advisors, you're going to come up. You're going to speak into the microphone clearly. Introduce your candidate. We will go one at a time. You'll introduce your candidate. As soon as they're introduced, we'll clap for them. Advisor will go sit down. Candidate will come up. We'll follow that process. Once we get everybody up here, meaning all the candidates up here, then again, the moderators will start the debate. Understood? All right. So at-home friends, again, you need to have access to debate notes. I emailed them to you. They're posted to the updates in Schoology, and they're also available in the materials section. The other piece, which I'm about to post for you. I just sent. This is not a piece I want. All right, so the link that you're going to go to is a YouTube link. So the link you're going to go to is a YouTube link. So your responsibility, I just posted the YouTube link. I'm going to post it again. I'm going to post it again. I'm going to post it again. Your responsibility is to go to the YouTube link and make sure that you're streaming through that URL. All right? So that YouTube link is there. I also emailed it to you earlier. So it was emailed to you at 7:53. So you can find the link there as well. You do not need to stay on this feed for the debates. In fact, it's going to be goofy because we're on like a 10-second delay. So if you're trying to listen in real time and then watch that, it's not going to work out. The URL will give you access to an updated, the best possible visual as well as best possible audio feed. So you're going to go to that link. Do that now. So you can log on to this, go to that link, open up the debate notes, pay attention, submit by the end of the period. All right, Ms. B, what do we got?
Okay. So to select your podium, what I did is I went into financial reports and I added up how much money was in your contributions, your donations, any awards you got. Now, it might be a different total than what you think you have because I based it on what your financial person did correctly. So, the person who gets to pick the first podium has the largest total at $301,000, and that's Will. All right, campaign manager, he wants the middle.
All right, so whoever's Will's campaign manager is, hang that up in the middle, please.
What? Oh, get ready. Tear into him. Tear into him. I'm so excited to let him know about Guam. Like, who else? I don't know. I've been excited about this for 3 days. This is my only joy I'm having currently. Like, I'm not even kidding. I've been depressed, but this is a joy I'm getting.
Coming in next with $282,500 is Bree Brown.
Just let your campaign manager know which podium you want. As you're looking at it right now.
Your right or my right?
And advisors, as those posters are going, well, yeah, just think about it.
It's nerve-wracking. It really does. This sucks. Do you remember when Josh tried to
Who we got next?
All right, coming in next at $265,000 is Brian.
Haley, while we're waiting on them, how much money did your campaign team raise to get you that illustrious spot? $0.
What?
So,
Financial manager lost all my money.
yes. That's what's up. Yes. And all their points. So, not your points, but their points. Now, I say that, and Haley reminded us it was a great laugh, but again, I'm saying, because podium can matter. Sama, where were you?
Center.
Dead
Center
center,
stage.
right? Tanu, where were you?
Center.
Dead center. So it doesn't. You can be center and win. You can be on the outside and win. It didn't matter. You've got to make the best of it. All right, Miss B, who we got next?
All right, next up, with $187,500 is Maya.
Next to Ryan.
Were you next to me?
All right, that means go ahead and put boot cars up all the way over here. Advisors, start making your way to the podium.
I was like, he's gonna write a 5. He's gonna write a 5, and then he wrote a 0. I was like,
It was unbelievably close. Like, very close.
we were asking.
Yeah.
Didn't you have 21, and I thought I had 20?
Something like
Hey,
that.
my folks in the audience, you're required to be filling out that document. So that'd be Alex, Ahams, Renika, Telez, Drew, Ben. I started putting names in those boxes. All right, so look at Miss D. South Florida.
Wait, I did not hear anything you said.
How close did you like?
It
All right,
was
so
the
next
last
step.
the
We're
last
gonna start
category
on
down
the
to me
left,
and
and
Harrison,
we're gonna work our
and
way
then
to the right. So left as I'm looking at it. So what would that be, Ryan?
I
Stage
said
left.
close.
and then I
All
got
right,
the
stage right.
yeah.
Amon
I
is
got
going to
one of the
introduce
categories then.
Bubakar. They'll switch places, which means Amon will head back to the computer or their computer. Bubakar's heading up, and then we'll just go left to right. So tell us why, Bubakar.
Is this on?
Should be.
Okay, that's good. So, our country and the world is a lot more broken than a lot of politicians make it out to be. And as per my candidate's usual style, I got to get straight to the point. Someone has to fix it. Someone who has their priorities in check and who doesn't waste time on semantics. So, let's give it up for Boubacar Diallo.
All right, hello. So my name is Rachel Birnbaum. I am the advisor for Reham Bedamer over there. Put the Amer in America. She is going to be speaking about her very opinionated issues today. She's a very strong-speaking woman who knows how to deal with the issues at hand. So let's welcome Reham to the stage.
What should have been your slogan? Or slogan's not a word. Slogo.
All right, Autumn, and again, make sure you speak into that microphone, please.
Okay, so Will is the president of the Advancement Party, and he's just been great to work with. He knows his politics and his current events. And yeah, he's just a great person. Anyway, Will, take it away.
From day one, I have gotten to see behind the scenes how much Ryan's wanted this. And, you know, it's easy to overlook, but when you see the work that's put in behind, it's truly amazing, truly humbling to see. And as a president, that's what you want, someone who's going to work and work and work until they can't work anymore. So without further ado, please welcome Ryan D'Angelo.
When Maya was a Girl Scout, she bought hundreds. When Maya was a Girl Scout, she bought hundreds of dollars of food for starving people, and she has also spent numerous hours making Easter baskets with essential items at her church for homeless people. Also, she has 2 dogs, Coco and Sally, and she does cross country and track. As a shining example of a leader and active community participant, Maya will truly elevate the voices of Scioto and implement policies that will reflect the interests of the people and actually create change in our modern world.
Few notes, and then I'm turning it over to the moderators. Number 1, folks in the room, keep it under control. Number 2, folks in the room who are required to be filling out the debate notes. It's part of your grade. Make sure we handle that. Number 3, make sure that when you're speaking, candidates, you speak directly into the microphone. We know that today will be challenging in its own set of ways. Y'all have done an amazing job. Do your absolute best. Nobody's asking you to be perfect. All right? Moderators, led by our 3 amazing presidents, we're grateful for you. We're going to turn things over to you. same thing. Make sure you speak into the microphone when you ask those questions.
Which topic do you want to start? Do something with foreign policy. You said you want to climate change, right? Do you guys start with if you want to do climate change first, start with domestic. Yeah. Start with domestic. So if I can start if we're doing climate change.
The binder. Thank you so much, Will.
Binder.
Oh yeah. I can start it. We can do climate change. I don't, because if we want like foreign policy issues, I don't know about foreign policy. But we can start with climate change. We can start with climate change because that's what I know so far.
Because our live group is getting anxious. They always are.
Hello, candidates.
Here we go.
Thank you. I think more people would listen to me. Okay. Foreign policy?
Yeah. Okay.
Foreign? Oh.
Start it with
Doing climate change. Okay. Jeez. Okay. For our first topic for debate, I would like to start with climate change. So I would just like to hear all of you guys' policies on how you plan to handle the topic of climate change.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Ryan D'Angelo, and I'm sorry. Were you?
I would like you all to have a time limit of at least like 45 or so seconds.
Sorry for interrupting you. So we as a party believe that we need to start phasing out non-renewable resources such as coal because one, they pollute the environment, and two, they're a limited resource. We can't continue to rely on coal if there's not enough of it to take us through the end of time. Resources that are renewable, however, would be hydroelectric, which is basically like the Hoover Dam utilizes hydroelectric power. Solar power, geothermal power, which is basically harnessing the heat of the earth, which sounds pretty cool. And we need to continue evolving as a society economically because we need to stop relying on these non-renewable resources. So, yeah, thank you. Dude, you frightened me.
So we want to go completely 100% clean energy by 2030. So we want to ban fracking, and also we want to invest in vertical farming because it will save lots of water, land, and it's good for the economy. We also want to invest in reforestation. Also, recycling is not available to everyone, so we want to make it available to everyone and invest in biodegradable packaging. So there's not so we can have less plastic in the ocean and stuff like that. And the Sunshade program, it's the Space Sunshade. It was something that other countries would also have to invest in. And what it would do, it would reflect 2% of the sun's rays, which would temporarily halt some of the effects of climate change so we have more time to fix things.
So, if you flip to page 9 in the binder, it clearly illustrates my climate plan. My climate plan is basically to introduce a plan that would establish a clean power grid that would accept clean energy as it's introduced or as it's produced. We would also spend trillions of dollars on clean energy farms for wind and solar and hydroelectric. This would produce a lot of money that would also help balance out the deficit. And it would provide stable, clean jobs for these people to provide a transfer away from dirty energy. We must make sure to care for the most vulnerable in our populations, including those in the Appalachian region. For solar farms and offshore wind farms will help us with our goal to be carbon neutral by 2050.
For my campaign, we will be taxing countries based on their carbon emissions. So the higher the number of carbon emissions, the higher the tax. Working with other countries for a global agreement on how we can all work together to fix climate change and make the environment a better place. Bring awareness to issues that are directly caused by humans, man-made fires, deforestation, So one thing that's an issue is that there isn't enough funding for climate change. So defunding all funds with Israel, which will help. That money can go into making more solar energy in America.
For climate change, we want to improve public transportation and things such as bikes, walking, and things like that to make it so that people will be encouraged to use that more than emitting greenhouse gases with some other things that could affect climate change in the long run. We also want to set regulations for factories and things and make it so that they can actually release the emissions that they're doing and let the public decide or us decide to what we want to do with how much they're spent using the greenhouse gases and such. And we also want to stray away from fracking and using coal and oil-based projects towards clean energy, such as things like wind turbines, solar energy, and hydroelectric energy.
Hey, real quick, I know it's annoying, but you really got to put that mic near your mouth. And some of you are speaking so faintly, I can't hear you from here. So a little bit louder and put the mic under your mouth like it's an ice cream cone, but don't rip it.
We're trying really hard over here. Okay, so a lot of you guys talked about implementing wind farms and other renewable energies, but only Reham was the one that said how you would find funds for this. So for my question for you guys is, how do you guys plan on getting funds for your wind farms and your sustainable farming and things like that?
Funds. The U.S. has been deficit spending for a really long time. I'm going to be completely honest with you. So going into the deficit to purchase these, but once you purchase them, they would more than pay for themselves, and I have statistics here to back that up. Solar farms make $80,000 a year per acre, times 50 million acres would produce $400 billion a year, and this land would come from public lands and government-owned lands, and this would create millions of new clean energy jobs. Offshore wind farms, GE Martha's Vineyard offshore wind farm, the GE Haliade X blade produces 67 gigawatt hours per year, and that U.S. customers pay 13.31 cents per kilowatt hour, which is equal to about $9 million a year per turbine. This would help us be carbon neutral by 2050, and it would more than pay for the initial price of how much these turbines and these solar panels would cost.
While I do agree with a lot of what Will is saying, I also think a lot of funding can come from this, from ending federally funded fracking and coal mining, as those are both incredibly expensive procedures. No matter how you're doing it, even if you're just sifting for ores in rivers, that's still expensive because you have to pay the workers. And while you still do have to pay the workers, like Will said, they're going to pay for themselves. These plants are going to end up paying for themselves. And as you continue to phase out fracking and coal mining, you will also improve the environment as well, because coal mining is also very harmful to the environment. And it'll save money, and it'll help the U.S. move towards carbon neutralism. I don't know if that's a thing.
So some of the ways that we can pay for this is we want to cut defense spending by 75%. I know that sounds like a lot, but it won't take away from our military at all. And we also want to end the war on terror, which would save $320 billion a year. And we also want to close tax loopholes. That's a big reason how the rich can get away with not paying taxes, stuff like that. So if we close tax loopholes and then properly raise the taxes on the rich, we will also obviously have more money to go for to fund these programs.
To fix and where we get the funding from, we would get it from defunding the excessive amount of money that is spent on the military and defense. The excessive amount of federal money and stuff that is spent on the military and such. And we also want to defund fracking and oil harvesting companies. And yes, it could raise concern about the U.S.'s safety, but it wouldn't have a large effect because it was overfunded to begin with in the first place.
So all of your plans involve dramatic change that would cause harsh backlash from the energy sector as well as Congress, because energy is a topic that has a lot of support from Congress, and getting their approval will be hard. So how do you plan to combat this?
Well, quite frankly, a lot of the time people in the government are focused on monetary value of things and of just economics and U.S. wealth and their own personal wealth. As we continue to move towards being carbon neutral, we can show people this is going to make the U.S. more money as we move along. This will make people more money, and it'll keep you, in your pedestal, which is obviously not the greatest thing in the world, but also to convince Congress that that's okay, that being carbon neutral is okay. You need to show them, hey, this is going to help you just as much as it helps the people.
So one of the biggest things that people don't like about going green is that they think it's gonna, because people will lose their job and stuff like that. Going green will create 20 million jobs, and we could end unemployment. And also, people who work in the fossil fuel industries, they can also go into they'll have jobs that they can go into renewable energy.
Blatantly honest with most of you guys. Saying things like ending coal and fracking is never going to pass with the House or the Senate, especially if you have Republicans in either of those chambers, which you will. So my plan doesn't call for that, but it calls for a gradual phasing out of non-renewable energy resources. And at the core of it, my plan produces so much money and it creates so many jobs that, like Ryan said, it just comes down to the economics of it. If you want money and you want jobs, you support this plan. And I don't think that there's any negative reasons of why you wouldn't support the plan. I mean, I think it just comes down to making the U.S. money and creating more jobs to help our people.
Piggyback off of Will and Ryan, it really is down to the economy. Congress thinks that it's going to be too much money to go green for more solar energy. So the biggest thing is to show them that people that are working in the non-sustainable businesses, they will have opportunities to have jobs that are sustainable that will help America become green, and to really show them that if we don't work now and we don't show them that if we don't change how climate is today and how we pollute the earth, then there won't be earth anymore, and that it's either you're going to help and you're going to make a change, or you're just going to destroy earth.
I agree with the other three that spoke before me about people concerning to losing their jobs and such, and it's all down to the economy in the first place. But like, as they said, we need to prove to them that we can sustain more jobs and things, and economy in America would not go down from this. And we just need to prove it to them by we could put more funding into things like we could like relocate people for that or inside the oil and coal job companies and put them in more clean energy jobs, which is helping the economy of America and as well as making America go green eventually.
Research has shown that at least 100 companies have been responsible for 71% of all industrial emissions since human-driven climate change was officially recognized. How will you hold corporations accountable for the level of pollution and greenhouse gases they contributed, and what role do they have to play in your climate plan?
I will start off. Like I said before, we plan on taxing businesses, based on their carbon emissions. So,
really quick, do you say taxing countries or businesses?
Countries and businesses.
I had a question about that. How are you going to facilitate an international tax?
Well,
how are you going to get a country to agree to that?
Well, it will be not directly through, but through tariffs and sanctions.
Interesting.
When you say that you're going to tax on tariffs, how do you think that will affect people working? Like, I mean, we need money and we need the trade for materials. So how are you going to combat those tariffs when other countries decide they don't like what you're doing and they decide not to trade with you, and then we have a shortage on resources and people can't work because of the shortage on resources?
That is a very strong point, but America has resources that countries will want. When we tax tariffs, it will kind of just be the start of it, but kind of to trickle down from it, come to a mutual agreement on how we can all work together to create an agreement, like I said, onto how the two countries or just all countries can work together to make climate better, because it's not just America that's affecting the world, it's everyone. It's a lot of the allies or wars or nuclear power that is kind of affecting the climate, and it is controversial to increase taxes. But it's not just businesses in America, it's countries, so that'll be a big thing.
That taxing tariffs isn't a thing. Instead, you would have to impose import or export tariffs on various different countries that aren't complying with regulations, which would then in turn start multiple different trade wars with thousands or hundreds of different countries. When I could be wrong, but your initial policy platform said that you supported lowering tariffs to end the trade war with China. So now we're going against that, and we're imposing tariffs on different countries for agreements that they didn't agree to because the U.S. wants to make them agree to something, correct? Your original plan said that you...
Can you...
Yes, I would just like to have a comment then.
You have 5 seconds to give a comment. I need your answer.
Okay, our plan would introduce cap and trade programs, which would help, and carbon taxes, which would help cut emissions from the top 70 companies.
Well, I do agree with that. I also think that the U.S. already does have a cap and trade system for companies, and if companies don't use their carbon emissions, they can sell their space for carbon emissions to companies who might exceed that. Like if Exxon uses more than they're supposed to, then some smaller company can sell them their carbon emissions. But I think that we should lower people's carbon emission standards as we continue along, because if we're going to keep letting people just pollute and pollute and pollute, they're never going to stop. Because then if we just give way every time that they want, like, okay, but like we're producing more and we're going to have more carbon emissions, you have to put your foot down and say, no, we know that that's going to happen, but you need to figure out cleaner ways to produce your product.
So I think we need to tax big corporations on their carbon emission because they run our society. So we need to tax them based on that and pressure these companies to go carbon neutral. And we, as kind of like almost like a world superpower, we need to take the lead on climate change, which could help get other countries to get in on trying to go green and stuff like that, and also pressuring other countries to go green.
Plus, we want to set regulations on the amount of gas emissions, and also make public records, and forcing companies to make public records on how much greenhouse gases they're producing annually, or maybe even monthly. Companies such as Exxon and things like that will be fined for not doing these things and releasing their emissions to the public and stuff. And we could choose, or as I said before, the civilians or the people can choose, and us, we could choose on whether they are emitting too much greenhouse gases and things like that, and fix it from there.
I had said the U.S. does have the ability and the research done to become like the leader of being carbon neutral and fully green powered. And I just wonder, why aren't we doing that?
Okay, so another source of a lot of carbon emissions are from public transportation. My question is, what programs do you plan to implement to combat the carbon emissions from public transportation, and how do you plan on implementing those?
I think we should invest in clean transportation, so electric cars and electric trains. It would be way better for the environment and not as damaging as other sources of transportation.
We should improve public transportation, as I said before, things like electric car companies, and as she said, electric trains and stuff, so that we can make the environment more friendly for America. And as we know, we're one of the biggest, economies inside the entire world. So other places and countries will see what we're doing and we'll set an example for them to be able to, fix climate change as a whole in the future.
As Boubacar is saying, we can help these people move towards it, and these plans, quite frankly, are going to end up paying for themselves. We won't have to keep purchasing oil from other countries, and quite frankly, a lot of what goes on in the Middle East and the warfare is over capital and oil. And so if we don't need as much oil, we won't have to, one, spend as much in the Middle East, and two, kill as many people in the Middle East, and two, pay for that much oil. And because we have the ability to use battery power and electric power instead of oil, and we're just not doing it.
but I think the clear issue is that there isn't funding for electric cars, electric trains. So by increasing the funding for those materials, we can see in the future electric cars, electric trains, and buses and public transportation will change with the increase of funding.
Going off of that, I think increasing federal funds and subsidies for electric cars and various different electric vehicles, because they did exist under the Obama administration, I think bringing them back is a good first step in the right direction. I would say that relying on the private sector is also a good idea, and I think that eventually it's going to become plain to consumers that if I can get a 36 mile per gallon Toyota Sienna over a 24 mile per gallon, I don't know, Honda, well, it makes more sense to get the Toyota, especially if they're the same price. So I think just competitiveness within the private sector will also kind of make its own way. So I think really relying on the private sector to do its duty, and I think eventually with increased federal regulations that will happen.
Okay, we are going to move on to the next topic. We're going to move on to domestic policy, specifically education. So you each have 45 seconds to give us a rundown of your policies for education.
I have a very in-depth plan, or rather my team does. The U.S. already spends $91 billion a year subsidizing colleges, public and private anyways. With our plan, which would include anybody who is disabled or makes under $125,000 a year as a whole household, they would be able to apply for tuition-free college. However, you would still have to apply to the college and be accepted into the college. You can't just you can't fail your way through high school and just have this backup thing where you're just like, oh, I can fail all the way through high school, but then I'll still have this plan. And the plan would only cost about $80 to $85 billion, which would save billions of dollars, which you can spend on something, or you don't have to spend them. And it would end up paying for them. The plan would pay for itself as people would pay more in taxes with these better jobs.
So one of the things, I think education can be a touchy subject. One thing that my group really wants to focus on is funding based on need and not based on test scores. Schools that get better test scores get more funding, and schools that don't get the best test scores get less funding. An example of this is Dublin City Schools and Columbus City Schools. The opportunities and resources are very different. And so not all kids, depending on what school they go to, have the same opportunities as other kids in better school districts. So I think we need to fund based on need and not based on test scores so everyone can get a good education.
I would just like to butt in there and say that the primary funding for Dublin City Schools comes from income property taxes. So it's not like we are getting more money from the federal government. It's actually coming from the citizens that go to Dublin City Schools. And also how I would address the student loan gap would be an income sharing agreement where students obtain financing through the schools themselves and pay it back based on a fixed percentage of their income after graduation. This means when their income is low, so too are their payments, and when their income rises, their payments to the colleges also rise.
1 second. I actually don't live in Dublin. I live in Columbus, and I see this firsthand. How people, I'm obviously a very privileged guy as I go to Dublin schools, but I live by Centennial High School, and I see how people suffer because I live by these people who go to these Columbus City schools and they're not getting the education that they need, and that's heartbreaking to me. And while income property tax is a major fund of that, we need to continue to fund more inner city schools because it's just saddening to see.
I would like to request that we wait to make all comments until after everybody has gone over their policies.
So the main thing is to increase federal funding for education. Most public school systems are funded by the state. So by defunding heavily funded programs, police, military, prisons, that defunded money, like 10%, cutting 10% from police, prisons, military budget will go to school fundings, and that will go to increasing teachers, resources, programs, and that can also go to making colleges free for low-income families, as well as removing requirements on state testings, like Maya said, how it's based on the performance of the teachers and students.
Similarly to what Reham said, we want to redirect 15% of the military budget into our education. So because we understand that education is a really important thing in America, and as a country, like as a big of a country we are, we set an example for other countries, and we need to understand that our education is something really important. So we need to realize what our priorities are and fix what we need to do by not overspending on things like military and such, and focusing on education. That's like improving wages on teachers, making colleges like, you know, cost less and things like that.
Will, I just have a quick question for you. As I'm looking through your thing that you so kindly gave us. In your part 1, section A, it says that classes are increasingly focusing on science and math. Are you seeing this as a pro or a con?
So I'm seeing this not as a pro or a con, but I think it's just a fact that they are increasingly focused on science and math. And I think when we stop focusing on classes like history, it really kind of lowers the knowledge that people have about their country's history and world history in general. And I think history teaches so many valuable skills like philosophical things and critical thinking that other classes just simply won't give you. So I think it's important that we balance out our schedules within our schools.
Okay, so I actually have another question for Will because I read through your press release and I love how Ryan mentioned the inner city schools difference. In your press release, you planned on having a 1 to 20 for the teachers. How do you plan on giving incentives for teachers to work in rougher areas such as inner city schools while we're still getting this funding to fund them more and have more opportunity for them?
So funding for schools is different than salaries that are paid for teachers. So I think the school districts themselves, I mean, why do teachers go work in Columbus City Schools? It's a basic question. Like, they get paid more and they have higher benefits than school districts that aren't as nice. So I think continuing to rely on that, but also instituting policies like a 1 to 20 student to staff ratio would also decrease the problems that you have within inner city schools and help balance out the inequality across school districts.
So I know the way that some states work is like they don't have teacher unions and stuff. So for them, it's a lot harder to demand a respectable salary. And Dublin and Ohio is one exemption because they do have a union and they do have teachers that fight for them on their behalf. But what are you going to do about the states that don't have that? And this can go for anyone, I guess, but who wants to talk about it. But it was directed at Will. But how are you going to kind of implement that policy in areas where they don't have as much representation?
So I think the power of unions is a great thing within our country, and the power of collective bargaining is an invaluable tool that most other countries don't have. And I think supporting those unions across the country is a great first step. I think just making it easier to form a union is a good kind of foundation building block. But I think also there's sometimes a negative aura around unions in that they let people kind of slack off and that they cause problems, which we all know is not exactly true, but they can cause problems occasionally. And cracking down on those unions that can cause problems and those members that can cause problems is a good first step of making sure that all people do their fair share of work and that unions get a good PR, I guess.
Do you have examples of unions that cause problems, and what problems do you mean?
Yeah, so for example, my grandfather worked in a union and he was a supervisor, and once the union moved in, it got increasingly harder to hold people accountable because you would have janitors that would just like get half-hour breaks every few hours, and like they would be able to do stuff that they normally weren't allowed to do, when it was kind of like, okay, they're getting paid to do that, but it's decreasing their work efficiency and they're not getting the same amount of work done, but they don't really need all that time off. So that's just an example.
Are you sure that was the union not paying attention, or was it supervisors at the said schools? Because unions are across districts and not at one singular school.
That was not for a school district union, it was for a factory union.
So was it a management issue, or was it a union issue?
I cannot speak to specifics, but I would say from my knowledge of what he told me, it was basically a union issue because once the unions moved in, they kind of had decreased work efficiency.
What was your grandfather's view on unions, though?
I am not sure.
Okay.
Oh my.